Little spike. How you guys doing? Good? Doing good? Feeling good? I like the excitement. We planted him there, by the way. So, if we can switch over real fast to my screen, hopefully. I don't know how that works, but through a magic button right up front. Just so you guys can get my contact information. My Twitter handle as well as my email address. My website is paultrani.com as well, so I have tutorial videos out there based on sort of what I show today. So write that down. And again, I just tweeted out a link using the hashtag for the conference as well about my session and some helpful tips going forward. So that's the easiest way to see what's going on, because honestly, guys, there's going to be a ton of cool stuff coming to Photoshop within the next 2 weeks that I'm like so tempted to share, but I know we're also recording this session and I don't want to get fired. So we'll talk afterward, you know, after a beer or two, I'll be like, yeah, and then we're doing this and that and the other thing. Just don't have a camera on me. All right, let's move on. But really it's all about what's new in Photoshop, right? And really it's, you know, people see the word Photoshop and they're like, okay, it's dealing with photos. But through our research, we've discovered it's really used for design, obviously, and screen design. And I think it's cool, to be honest with you, we've finally wised up to the fact that people use Photoshop for creating interfaces and designing, okay? And that's why you'll see a lot of new features coming from Photoshop in that area. But actually, let's just do it just by a show of hands. Who has Photoshop CC, just by a show of hands? It's like everybody does. That's cool. Photoshop CS6? It's okay. That's cool. I'll just stop there, okay? We'll just stop there. But nonetheless, I can go on and on all the various tips and things you should be using in Photoshop from a designer standpoint, but some of the new things with Photoshop CC, the 2014 release, which hit in June, so for you Creative Cloud members, just hit update and you'll have these new features, right? And that's what I want to talk about, is this new stuff, specifically to screen design. Smart guides, linked smart objects, tricks to generate graphics and create CSS, as well as exporting those graphics, okay? But then there's also other apps as well, okay? And I can talk all day, actually for multiple days on all of these, but I'm just going to be able to highlight them since I only have 45 minutes, and I'm focusing on Photoshop. As we all know, that's why we're here, okay? So things you need to use, yada, yada, yada. What's highlighted here is the stuff you should: Typekit fonts, smart guides, linked smart objects. I'm going to get out of this right now. I'm like halfway through this this PowerPoint. Hey, look, that's kind of funny. I didn't plant that, but I had to update Acrobat. So all right, now we can get started. Now that I've updated Acrobat, let's get started. And in fact, I go out to adobe.com, and really when you log in, you notice it's like we kind of really don't have much of an ego. It's like I think it's paul.com, because this is our new updated website. Really gives you all of your features, your files, your fonts sort of up front. And as I click on, here we are, Photoshop, you can see what's new. I can learn about all the stuff that I was mentioning earlier. So it's all right under here, under what's new, okay? So in general, I've updated it, and not only that, I can go to, in fact, if I install Photoshop, it's going to install this desktop app. Okay, hold on one sec. There it is. So it'll install this desktop app. You'll see it right here. It's installing. I've updated Photoshop CC. We also have other apps that I can get a hold of, but really I want to focus on assets, because this is going to really help my workflow. So I'm going to open up this folder, because I can actually have a Creative Cloud Files folder that syncs to Creative Cloud. And you can see all these checkboxes. It says, hey, you know what? This folder is actually synced to Creative Cloud. So that's how I'll typically work. So I'll drag a file in here, and it's going to sync as you'd expect, okay? Similar to Dropbox, okay? And that works for entire folders as well. So I can jump into, you know, this folder. In fact, I have multiple designs actually syncing now as well. But as this asset syncs, might take a second. In fact, let's go to this one right here. I can view this on the website. Okay, so we're now viewing this through Creative Cloud. This, what you're going to see here in a second, is a PSD. Okay, so just wait for it, but you'll see a rendering of that file. Okay, so we'll just go to the details and make sure that's displayed. And typically, this is how I'd like to work. And I want to talk about extract in a second. But in general, here, let me go back. Here are all my files. And all those files that you saw on my desktop are actually available in here as you'd expect. Okay? So as that PSD is syncing, let's just wait for that. But nonetheless, I can jump into this Illustrator file, for instance. So whether it's a PSD, an Illustrator file, an InDesign file, any file that we have the technology on, we're exposing that. So you can see it right here. Oh, Playfest poster, Illustrator file. It's not a JPEG. I didn't have to worry about exporting out a JPEG and sending it to the client in an email, because all I really need to do is click share, and I can send this link to anyone I want. Okay, so create that public link, okay, and send it to anyone. Somebody at Adobe might actually get that, right? I've sent that file. So what they get, in fact, if I just click on that link, they'll be able to see the file. They don't need to be a Creative Cloud member, but I can send it to my client that way, or I can send it to my designer friend if I want to. And they can come down here and add comments. And I could have added comments as well, say, hey, check out this design. What do you think? And they would say, it's awesome. And I do this with all my work. A lot of my work is I just comment on it, saying, hey, it's awesome. Hey, you know what? Know what else is awesome about it? Oh, look. We can go ahead and inspect that content and say, hey, these are the colors used there. It was made in Illustrator. And here are the fonts that are being used with it as well. All right, so that's pretty straightforward. And this is really how it starts to change the way you work, even as I go into the activity. So I could jump in here, and I can see, oh, look, Paul says it's awesome. It gives me that feed. Okay. Not only that, guys, check this out. Versioning. I could change this. What if hypothetically, crazy thought, maybe they didn't think it was awesome and had me do a change. I do that change on my desktop for this file, okay? Whether it's Illustrator or Photoshop, I make a change in here. If I wanted to, selecting everything, and I don't even know what I'm going to change, but nonetheless, if I make any change in this file, it will actually get updated. So I move that up there, I save it. I don't have to worry about making Playfest poster final. I mean it this time, .psd, because I have those files on my desktop. That syncs, and you'll see it over here in a moment. And I might have to refresh the page, but we have versioning. Keeps it 2 weeks back. Actually, even more is what I've recognized. So again, here's current version. You can go back to the revised version. Clicking on that, you'll see the text is down there. So whether this is a Photoshop file or an Illustrator file, you have that control. All right, finally, here is my file. That is my PSD that's actually synced. And I want to get into this file some more. I have other files. As far as sort of changing the way you work, I actually have this Play Campaign website that I'm working on. And let's say you are collaborating with somebody else. Yeah, I sent it to the client. And they said, hey, looks good, maybe change the font. I'm like, okay, I need help with this. I would love to collaborate since 80% of the people in this room said they have Creative Cloud. I can say, hey, you know what? Let's collaborate on this folder. So I can share a folder with you, say, for instance, this one right here. I can collaborate with you on this folder. Okay, so for this folder, you can see I'm actually collaborating with anyone, actually, still on this at this point, but someone at adobe.com, invite them. They'll get an email, and they will have access to this. And it will say in their feed right up here, it says, hey, you know what? You've been invited, or this person has been invited, and they've joined this folder. So that's what happens. And now I'm able to work with these people, or whoever I want, as long as they're a Creative Cloud member, on this particular project, okay? So again, they can work on it. We have versioning, so if I don't like what that designer did, I could always roll it back if I want to, right? I wouldn't usually do that, but I could. And then I can continue to work as well, so we can kind of collaborate on files. And I'm just going to open up this file, and this is typically what happens, right? It's like, hey, you know what? You have fonts that are missing, okay? And that means you have to go find that font, that TrueType font, download it off the internet. Hopefully it's free, and it installs the font along with some malware, and now somebody's spying on you through your webcam, right? Or not. Maybe they are. I have no idea. But nonetheless, if they're using Typekit, we can say, hey, just resolve it. I don't want to deal with those issues. Let's resolve those fonts if they've used Typekit. All right, and that's what's happening now, in fact, for that font right up here at the top. That's what's going on, just as an example. Okay, this is a font that actually just got installed. This good headline font right there. So let's get out of there. All right, so that brings me to assets. Okay, so we've synced files. We can go to fonts. We can see good was one of the fonts. A couple others. Really doesn't matter. All I know is all my fonts are synced up. All right, and I can continue to work on this. And I can manage all those fonts. Or even if I wanted to add more, I can select Add Fonts from Typekit. Even going into this text, I can say, hey, you know what? I don't even have the text layer. I just have the text layer selected. I don't have the text selected. And I can come in here and I can just roll over to find the font that I want. It's like about time, right? If anybody's using, if you guys are using Photoshop, you're like, oh, I had to select the text? Yeah, it's the little things, right? What if I wanted to change that to a bold font? Type in bold, okay? Just like that. Serves up all my bold fonts. I can run through it. In fact, show me just the Typekit bold fonts, and you can roll over and pick the font that you want there. This is where everybody judges me based on the font that I pick. What is he going to pick? Something boring or cool? Boring. That's what I'm selecting. But I have that control. That's the short of it, right? So I can save this file, continue to work on it. This is what I want to do next, actually. In fact, let's just jump in here. Let's create a kind of outside of this folder. This is what I want to do next. Is I need to just create some shapes right down here for navigation. Okay, so I can jump in here and say, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and draw out some sort of shape. All right? There's my shape. Maybe I wanted it to be a square. Maybe I wanted it to be a circle. I'm really indecisive. That's why I did a rounded rectangle. And I can always change that because as soon as I create that object, it brings up the properties panel. So now I can change if I want to turn it into a circle or turn it into a square or any variation in between that. If I unlock that, and you could be like a cool designer and do like every other corner like that, and that makes you a cool designer. But you guys didn't know that, did you? All right, so nonetheless, we do what we want, round those corners. I'm going to duplicate this a couple times. So what do we do? Say I want to make 3 or 4. I'll hold down the Alt key and Shift key and click and drag. Because I want to have a couple of these. I'll do this a couple times. I'll drag this out. And I'm like, I think I did that the right distance. So I use the selection tool. And I'll be like, okay, let's see what that's like. Okay, that is 26 pixels. 26 pixels. And then I'll move that over. And I'll be like, suck, I'm off like 2 pixels. Right? And then you'll move that over. That was 10. 1, 2. Right? So you guys do that. I do that. Which brings me to Smart Guides. So we'll go down to Smart Guides right here. Actually, smarter Smart Guides, to be honest with you. So you create your shape. You do your click and drag just like you were doing before. Dragging that over. And now I get those guides saying, hey, you know what? You're the same size as your neighbor. All right, and you know what? As soon as I drag it over again, oh, thank you for bringing up that 20 pixels, snapping to, saying, hey, you know what? You're 20 pixels apart. You'll notice lots of things like this. Even as I select this object, I'm holding down the Command key, but in general, I can see the distance between it and the other items. For anything there, I start to see those guides and get those measurements. All right? And yes, you could. So basically, what a lot of you might be doing is using guides, and that's totally fine, dragging out guides. Guys, we have some new things coming in terms of guides. If you've ever needed an 8 or 12 grid layout or whatever, we have some new things coming in sort of that direction as well. So things that I can't really show you yet, but nonetheless are going to be really exciting. So let me just finish this, just dragging this out some more. You guys get the idea. Like that, there we are. All right. So what I want to do now is, I'll start to import some icons, right? Maybe these were created in Illustrator, and maybe you guys are like every other designer I know where you're actually using Illustrator and Photoshop together. And it really doesn't matter what you use. Even if you're using another Photoshop file, you've always been able to place embedded, or if you ever do a copy and paste from Illustrator to Photoshop, you're placing an embedded file. So when you double click on it, it's going to open up in Illustrator. And that's great. That's exactly what I want. We also have place linked. Okay? So I can jump in here for this file, going out to, grab an asset. Just grab this Illustrator file, placing it, right? So I'm just placing this microphone right in here, as you'd expect. Pretty straightforward. It is a linked file now. There it is. In fact, my properties panel shows me. It says, hey, you know what? You're a linked file, and that's where it is. Hey, you want to edit that content? Just double-click on it, and you're editing that Illustrator file, right? So I can change it from this microphone to, this microphone. This is where it gets cool, guys, because remember, what am I doing? I'm modifying, if I can get to that folder right in here, I'm modifying this RB Illustrator file. Remember, I could be collaborating with someone else. So your Illustrator guy or whoever's in charge of the brand could be working or collaborating in that same folder. They come to you and say, hey, you know what? Oh, no, Paul, we have a new logo, blah, blah, blah. You got to update all of your PSDs. What do? You update that one Illustrator file, and it will update all of your PSDs since they're all linked to that one Illustrator file. Whether you're collaborating with someone else and they're updating it, or you are, right? So does that make sense? Straightforward. Seems to work for me. I like that. That happens all the time to me, like when I've worked for various agencies. The logo's changed a little bit. You have the old one. You could hardly tell the difference, but it's changed, and you'd have to change it. So again, jumping in here, just saving that file. It saves it, again, on the desktop. That's the one that's actually syncing right now. So whether I've updated it or someone else has, doesn't matter. But when I go into Photoshop, it says, hey, you know what? You're updated. You're good to go, right? So hopefully that kind of changes the way you work when it comes to collaborating with others. And really creating a layout, because that's what I'm doing right now. So let's take it to the next level. My design's looking pretty good, I'm going to say. Oh, this is what happens if you ever have if people have the same file open at the same time, then it's going to tell you who had it open, the time, and all that stuff. So that's all good. Just going back, I can start to work on this, and this is really part of my website. Okay, so here it is. A little more refined, right? Looks pretty good, yeah. Okay. But now what I need to do is I need to export out like all of these graphics. So that's always a fun time. You're like, okay, I'm going to put on my headphones. I need to do that background image of Jesse Boykins. A zillion different ways to do this. I'm going to do a select all, copy, file, new, paste, mash a bunch of keys together for save for web, right? It's like 4 keys. I don't even know. I just press them all. And then save, and that's your one Boykins or header JPEG, right? And you can obviously see, doing this for a complex site or a complex layout could take some time. Or what you can do is come over here to that layer. I might have to expand this out. So you guys can see that well. For that layer, I can jump in there and say, hey, you know what? Make it a JPEG, okay? .jpeg. File name, .jpeg. It's a pretty large JPEG, though. It's like I had control over the image quality when it came to exporting out the web version. We can type in 30% if I want to make it 30%. Okay? What about layer folders? Hey, why not? Or layer groups as they're known, .jpeg. Okay? That's done. Even coming in here, this would be what? Ping file, PNG. Notice how I get that little warning? That's basically, it's a linked file and it can't find it. It says, hey, you know what? Don't worry, I'm still going to render it. You just can't edit it. But you need to kind of relink that file. So that's what that is. Doesn't mess me up at all. All I need to say is PNG, and then we're good to go there. And all of those are PNGs, okay? So at that point, it's pretty much any layer. All I have to do is name it .png, .jpeg, .gif, right? And remember, this is part of my website, which is, there's my one image, okay? But everything else, there's like no images in this. Well, maybe there is one or two. Uh-oh, that already got generated. Let's take a look. I'll show you what it does. In fact, since I was playing with this earlier, let me show you. Because there's really one thing you have to do. I apologize because I am working on this website, so there's lots of folders, but in general, the PSD is what I'm working on. It's going to make a new folder called play-assets and put all of those files in that folder. Okay? So coming over here, File, Generate, Image Assets, and now I got to rush out to that folder. Hurry, it happens fast. There it is. Generate, 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 generate. You know, just taking the rest of the day off. That's, my boss doesn't need to know about all this stuff. Right? Pretty straightforward, right? I can't think of an easier way to get graphics out of Photoshop other than naming a layer. Yes, you do have to name your layers. Okay? But that's, if you guys aren't using this, we launched this in October of last year. And it's amazing how many people don't know about this because it's hidden. Let's face it. It's like, it's kind of what this generate. What does that even mean? Image assets? Okay, well, why isn't it in saved for web? And we're going to address those issues. Okay, but it's kind of hidden, and we'll notice there's not a lot of discovery going on. But really, that's all you need to do. And that goes for anything. If I name the layer, .jpeg, whatever. Let's go beyond that, guys. Let's have a little more fun with it because we live in a day and age where we have to deal with low-res and high-res images, you know, your 2x images. So how do we deal with that? In fact, I'll just show you. This is kind of like more advanced stuff. Actually, we could do a couple different things here. Okay, let's say for this main header happens to be that layer group, as it's called. I want to generate another graphic called main header, comma, new file name, coming in here, SM for small, and maybe it's 50%. How do we deal with that? In front of that file name, 50%. It's going to make one at half that size. If I want a specific size, I could do 50 times 50, and that would be 50 pixels by 50 pixels, and it will generate that graphic. So you can have your sort of exact size, but I'm just going to do 50%, and it will generate that. So if it's before, it's the dimensions, inches, centimeter, millimeter. You guys get the idea. And then after is going to be the quality. Okay, so it will generate that. In fact, let's just take a look out there. There's your main header small. See? Done. And then the large one is done. And all I had to do is add that to my layer name. All right, what if we want to change it? Because I can imagine you guys are like me. It's like I'm very indecisive. I'm like, no, I want to change it. I want to, flip him horizontally so he's kind of looking the other way. And I don't have to touch anything. But when I go back out there, he is looking the other way. So it's tied to that PSD file. So are you guys using this? Is anybody using this? I just want to know. I'm trying to gauge where everybody's at. Maybe you think it's cool. You're like, I don't know. I think it's cool. Yeah, it's all right. It's only going to freaking, what are you using, the little X-Acto knife? You using the little X-Acto? You busting that thing out? That's cool. Do whatever you want. That's cool. I'm trying to save you from that. I don't want you getting cut. All right. Let's go beyond that. Okay, so we just generated a bunch of images. I didn't do this other part. Sorry about that. Coming up here, you can, and this is kind of a pro tip, you can have a whole nother, you could just name something default. New layer, call it default, and it will make a low-res folder and put all of those images in it at half the size. Okay? Because you're like, I don't want to have to go in and name every single layer. That will do it for me. In fact, we're going to cross our fingers and go out there, oh, and thank you very much. That's done, right? These are much smaller. But these are all those images at half the size generated that whole extra folder. Cool? Cool. That's way cool. All right? So again, I think it's really cool that, and again, if you want to do high res, you guys get the idea at this point. I'm just going to actually just leave those alone so it generates what I need to. Okay, so that should be doing its thing. I shouldn't even have to go in there and uncheck it or anything, but I do sometimes have to clear it out. If you ever delete layers that were named or change the names of them, it doesn't build up and keep all the old ones. It'll actually eliminate them. And that's what, when I was changing layer folders. But in general, that's everything. All right, so that's cool. I can take a look at my website, sort of going into, into Dreamweaver, just selecting live view. You can see there's, my graphics, and I can get into this a little more. In fact, let's take a step back because I cheated. I'm like, okay, well, all of a sudden, hey, your site is magically done, right? And let's talk about CSS now, if we could. Okay, so that's could be an issue, and this is just really easy to do. And I encourage if you're new or learning CSS, I encourage you guys to do this, but really we expose all the CSS for any file, or any layer. So this headline right here, you want the CSS? Oh, right-click, copy the CSS for that layer. It's going to give me the position, the font, size, all that stuff, copying it. I'm so lazy, I just put everything in a layer folder, and I can copy the CSS for everything in there. So you could have shapes, you could have images, obviously text. But it's just copying the CSS, and then you can go over, you can obviously see there's nothing in here, but if I just paste it in, there's all the CSS that I've just pasted in, and then you can see, my graphics as well. So there it is, done and done. Again, a very simple version, but there's all the CSS. And again, I don't know if you guys want this to be harder, but it's not. Provided when you go in here, I don't know why it's like top 446.66. What, really? Okay, well, I'd clean that up. But again, that's because Photoshop is pixels. It's like sub-pixel perfect. And that's what I want from Photoshop. I want precision. But then I jump in here and I would say, let's make this, 20% from the top, or do whatever modifications you want. Cool? Did you guys know that was in there? Some more magic, just copying and pasting? Yeah, that is. All right. And from there, since I mentioned a couple other programs, I am in Dreamweaver, by the way. In Live View, guys, Live View is a web browser. So this is WebKit running in Dreamweaver. So if I type in Google, I'm going to get Google in Dreamweaver. Wait for it. There it is, right? It's a browser running in here. I'm going to go back to my page that I was at. Because what I've always wanted to be able to do, wait for it, folks, wait for it, wait for it, wait for it. It certainly likes Google at this point. So let's just give it a second. But look at this. I'm actually getting the tags, the CSS. I'm getting all the CSS selectors for Google.com. So I could type anything in there. And again, I'm just going to focus on my site, right? So again, going to Design View. I have Live View. We're going to see it render out here in a second. There it is. Okay. Actually, I do not want that page. I want this one. So Live View. Sorry about that. Turning off Live View. We'll give it a second. But in general, I'm actually able to edit in Live View in Dreamweaver as well. So not only type in another URL, Okay, let's try this. Design view, clicking on live view. Oh, it really likes, does not want to let this go. But nonetheless, I'm actually able to get the CSS properties of anything on my page. So it's like you have your developer tools in Dreamweaver, but also you have the ability to add content as well. So again, we'll see that in a second. Let's go back to our slides just to make sure I'm covering everything. Smart guides, link smart objects, collaborating with others. I talked about that. I talked about exporting, generate assets, export CSS, and Creative Cloud export, guys. This is really exciting too. So okay, so maybe you don't want to deal with Photoshop, right? But you have a PSD, and such is life, right? You got that PSD, like okay, I got to turn this into a website or a mobile app or something, right? Well, we can do that. In fact, say you don't even want to deal with Photoshop at all. Let's go to this PSD. It's a different one. That's okay. We're still all familiar with it. Or I can even go to the same one. It doesn't matter. But nonetheless, check this out. I mentioned this earlier. Extract. So for this Jet Set Guide, this PSD, you have extract mode. So let's look at this a little larger. As I sort of scroll down or even start to roll over this content, you can see this text right here as I select it. Oh, thank you very much. In the browser, and this is for anyone, this is free, you get the CSS properties for that element from that PSD that's in the browser. Yeah, he's nodding his head, so he likes it. So that's good, and so do I, right? I mean, look at that. Okay, I can copy the CSS. It's copied to clipboard, use it however I want. You know, same thing for this text. You know, same thing for this image, and you can start to see it change. Okay, you can see for this image, well, what am I going to do with this? I actually need that image. How do I deal with that? Oh, well, just click this download button, this extract asset. So when I'll click on that, it says, hey, you know what? How do you want to save this out? Let's save it as a JPEG, you know, 60%, whatever I want. Click save, and it's going to put it in the assets tab right here. So I can jump in and start to click, say, hey, make it happen for this one. You'll see that one pop up. This one. You'll see this one pop up on down the line. So I don't even need to have Photoshop. How are we making money? I thought we sold Photoshop. And people can do like all this stuff without even requiring Photoshop to a PSD. You don't even need to be a Creative Cloud member. I think that impresses me as a company, but also concerned, as in like, how are they going to, you know, pay my salary? But nonetheless, that's what it does. You can see them over there, and ultimately I can click to download them, which is what I'm doing right now. Those are the images extracted from the browser. In fact, you'll see it obviously right there. Easy enough. Cool? Right, that's pretty awesome. Oh, look, you know, again, styles. I got the CSS styles. I know all the fonts that are being used. I know all the colors. I saw the assets. Oh, what about the layers? Oh, yeah, you have the layers there too. So if you want that Istanbul image, well, you can just click download this way as well. Again, all your layers are right over here. I don't know, I guess just kind of coming from, you know, just using Photoshop constantly, it's cool that we're exposing all this various technology through Creative Cloud, basically, for PSDs. Even comps, if you're using layer comps, are right here. So I can take a look at, say, the rollover layer comp here, and it will process that layer comp and then display it. So it's rendering that on some servers that have Photoshop and will give me that version. So you can see it's actually even off a little bit. The rollover was like for this image. It's like, okay, well, that's off. I could always jump in, going to that file, make that change. Again, in Photoshop, let's go to layer comps, which, like, don't even get me started because we've actually updated layer comps so you can, it doesn't break as much as it used to. Because I would always break layer comps because I'm moving something, I deleted some layers, and then everything's screwed up. Well, all you have to do is, like, if you move stuff around or updated them, you can say, hey, update this position for this rollover across all of the different layer comps, okay? But again, just jumping in there, making that change as you'd expect, like I'm doing right now. You guys get the idea. Changing that. Thank you. And I'm going to change this font just for kicks to Lush. Or not Lush. I wanted Lust script display. Deal with that font. That is awesome. I'm kind of in love with that font. So I'm just saving that file, guys. I didn't do anything. I just I am the developer. Say, hey, man, I updated that file, blah, blah, blah. Or maybe if you grab the CSS for this or that, whatever. They say, okay, well, send me the file. Well, just hit refresh in your browser. And it will be squared away. So that's what I'll do right now, refresh. This is in preview mode, and we want you guys to test it out, okay? Honestly, I'm not going to lie, because we want to get it all worked out. That's why we're doing a soft launch with it. We want to make sure everything is solid before we roll it out to the rest of the world, because it is, really cool. It's coming in here. You guys can see roll over. Wait for it. Wait for it. Well, it will update. It's probably syncing now because it's a large file, so you will have to wait for it to sync up. But even for that background, if I select that background, I should actually get the CSS. Oh, yeah, and you can get sort of your CSS, any of your prefixes for less, hat, whatever you want to. And that's about it for extracting assets from a PSD in a browser without requiring Photoshop. Hoping Adobe finds another way to make some money, since you could do this all in the browser. So let's talk about some other things as well. Let's go back into Dreamweaver where I was. Let's close that one because I don't need that one. Let's open up, say, this one right here. Selecting Live View, like I said, type in anything you want in here, your friend's website that you want to steal the CSS from. You're able to get that CSS, just like I'm doing now. In fact, if I switch to Css Designer and I select Inspect, notice how I start to get all the CSS off to the side. See that right over here? The CSS for any one of these items. So just rolling over it, I can get the padding. Okay, what about this button? All right, there's my button. I could care less where that CSS comes from. Just give me the darn computed properties, right? And obviously, I can see it right there. That's my EPUB. And also, as you'd expect, the computed properties for that item and all the CSS is right here, including media queries that you can add pretty easily. Even sort of conversely, if I select any of these selectors, it will highlight on the page where that's being applied. So if this is being applied in multiple places, I can go ahead and see it, check it out, make the changes I want to, and move on from there, So you guys get the idea. There's my hover. There's my button right here in general. You can see it right here, okay? And like I said, if I wanted to make a change to it, you guys get the idea. Let's change it to blue so we all can see it displayed. Oh, and since I'm highlighting that button, it actually highlights it down here. Okay, so as I select it, this is kind of hard to see, but it's actually, because I changed it to blue, it's hard to see because it actually highlights in blue. Let's just change it to a pink. Okay, you can see it highlight there, and you can see it highlight down here as well. All right, so that's Dreamweaver for you. There's more I can do. I can start to get other properties for elements. I can start to add certain IDs or classes right in here. So if I wanted to add a blur, which happens to be just another CSS class I have, I can go ahead and apply that on the go, and I'm well on my way. Cool. All right. What else you guys want to know about? Let me go to my slides because I didn't really talk about I didn't talk much about what we have here for generating an Edge Reflow project. You guys familiar with Edge Reflow at all? And I see a lot of hesitancy. Everybody's like, let's take a look then. So we have Edge Animate, allowing me to create rich animation and interactivity using web standards. And then we have Edge Reflow. This is Reflow. Hey, Photoshop's a little much. It's okay. You know what? You can create your website design or even a prototype in Reflow. So really, it's just a matter of creating what you want. And as I create things, of course, I could style them as expected. Okay, so just duplicating this a couple times. But obviously, it's snapping it to this grid. It gives me this grid that I can also adjust. But in general, I can work in Reflow to create a CSS-based layout where everything is flexible. So just like Photoshop is pixel perfect, yeah, Reflow is too, but you know what? It's actually obviously fluid and flexible. Okay, let me just take this and go like that, because otherwise that's going to bother me. So I can create this layout. I can see what content looks like, expand and contract it. Let's say, for instance, down to my tablet size, I can say, hey, you know what? Let's go ahead and add a media query. I've just added a media query right here. Now I don't need to create, say, a new PSD if you're in your Photoshop. All you need to do is just adjust that layout. So let's bring this down here for whatever reason. Make your edits that you want to make, like I'm doing right now. And that's my tablet layout. So we can go from desktop to tablet. And what happens, say, for instance, for this big image, if you will, and that could very well be an image, here's all my CSS for that as well. Easy, right? We just threw that in there. It's free, guys. Just download it, and you guys are good to go. And that's Reflow. All right. I'm running out of time, guys. What else you guys want to know about? I feel like I need to double-check my slides, because I'm doing pretty well on time. Dreamweaver, Edge Animate, Edge Reflow, and then there's Muse as well, which actually is doing quite well as an app. Muse allows me to create websites without writing any code, which sounds like blasphemy, right? You're like, wait a minute, that's not right. But then I'm like, wait a minute, I could use it. And again, it's good for whatever you want to use it for. In general, I use it for sort of like microsites, for small business sites. I actually just recorded a course on lynda.com on how to create a small business website with Muse, and it's super easy. Who's used Muse or has it and maybe has played with it? Anybody? We got one person? We got raise your hand. Be proud. A couple people. And that's great, because you realize how powerful it is. Me as a web designer / developer, I could use it to knock out a site just like that. Or you can have your graphic designer learn it and use it just like that to create what you want. And again, I don't have time to get into it, but I did just want to bring it to your attention. Okay? Yes, I'm concerned about the code that it generates. You want a developer to hate you? You create a website in Muse and then you hand it to them and then tell them to edit it. That's how you don't make friends. Okay? But in general, very powerful what you can do. We could take a look at a couple of these different sites. What I like about it is some of the more advanced things, like, here we go. I don't even know which one this is. Bear with me. Hold on one second, folks. This is also a lynda.com course. Again, you guys could watch it or not watch it. Doesn't matter to me. But this is just creating a one-page scrollable website. But this is the interface you guys get. So you just place images where you want to place them, place assets where you want to place them, right? So I've placed a bunch of ping files, and everything is separate. But then also what I did here, just to show you the power of it, is I've added scroll effects, okay? Because I want to create depth by having everything move at a different rate as you scroll down the page. You guys have all seen that work. And in fact, we will just preview this in a browser just to show you. Okay, so we won't worry about that. I have to find an asset there that is actually an Edge Animate asset. So that's why this says page not found. I actually need to relocate it. But nonetheless, this is the motion that I get. Look at that. See that depth? Created that in Muse. This entire site was created in Muse. That sticky menu, see how it goes up and then it sticks at the top? Perfect, that's what I want. Again, scroll effects for Slovenia. You go down, Brazil, highlights Brazil. Look at the depth that happens. So look, the Christ right down here is blurry, just for fun. Gets sharp, and then the background blurs out. Just done with scroll effects, just showing you the flexibility that you have. A slideshow, that advances as you scroll down, giving you that flexibility. Even when it comes to contact forms, which is a pain in the butt usually, hey, they're like drag and drop. You just have to upload it to server, and you can call it a day. So I encourage you to make a website for that, restaurant up the street and get free lunch for a year. Okay? Do you guys have any questions at all? Because I'm out of time. He just held up the big 0. Yeah, everybody's clear. Everybody's professional in Photoshop. Hopefully it reaffirmed things that you might already know, or you've learned some things. That's all I ask. You guys are a quiet bunch, but I love you nonetheless. That's it. That's all I got. Thanks, guys. Oh, that was great. That was great, Paul. That's awesome. Okay, if there are no questions, I'm going to be hanging around up here, but otherwise, you guys are dismissed, and let's chat if you have any more questions. Thanks.